Have you been wanting to create a cute little goose? You might be seeing them everywhere at your Michael's and your Hobby Lobby stores. They're going to be the wonderful spring animal this year. I'm going to walk you through the watercolor steps of how I painted her and then show you the pen and ink little marks of how to add the details. I also have this little guy up on my channel already, and they make the cutest little match set. So if you're interested in making them both, you'll have to check out the playlist for cute animals. He's underneath there. Now, for those of you who'd like to paint along with me, but drawing's not your thing, I got you covered. I do have a sketchbook membership where I have all the line tracers for any of the paintings I do on my channel. So go ahead and click that QR code or click the link in my description. That'll lead you right on over there and you can check out that information. Well, let's get started and we'll create this little goosey gal to go along with this little gander guy. For this painting, I'm going to be using a sheet of the Bockingford paper. It's a little different than the Canson that I normally use. It has a little bit more texture in it. For the watercolor, I'm just using this simple student grade set of watercolor. And before I start painting, I like to do a little swatch test of my colors so I have an idea of what I might be using. Now this is watercolor, so you're always going to start with your lightest and brightest colors first, and then work your way darker. Now this has a landscape in it, and when you're doing landscapes, you usually want to put your coolest colors in the background. So my more green, blue colors for my landscape, I'll put those in the background, and then as my ground is moving forward, they're going to become warmer and they're going to become darker. So these are the very first layers. That very background there is going to be more of a blue-green color that I'm using. I'm going to be doing more than one layer, so this is just the beginning stage. Now I'm kind of mixing my colors. I'm picking up a little bit of yellow-green, adding some of the blue-green in it, and that's what I'm going to be using for those taller trees in the background. If you happen to be drawing yours, when you're drawing it, you want to make sure that you're having some items that are different sizes. They want to have some smaller shapes and some bigger ones, so then that gives your painting a little bit more dimension. This watercolor set that I'm using doesn't have a wide range of greens, but it does have some blue and some more yellowish green. So I'm able to just mix my own colors. So I'm adding a little bit of more like brownish color to it, a little bit more green to kind of warm it up. So you can mix your own colors too. The reason why I like this set is because I love the pink shades in here. My other set, my Paul Rubens set, I don't really have that great of pinks. So I often rely on this one if I want to do some pink painting. I can use my other Paul Rubens too. It's okay to mix watercolor. You can use what you have, but I just kind of wanted to stick to using one box of color. So I'm just kind of adding a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And if you want to neutralize your greens a little bit, you can always add in a red-brown. Red is the complementary color to green, so if you add a red to your greens of some sort, it's going to make it more neutral and tone it down a little bit. You can kind of see as I'm moving forward, my colors are getting darker. And again, I'm going to be adding more layers to this, but you can see my cooler colors are in the background in the lighter shades. And as I'm moving forward, my greens are getting more yellow and more warm in the color. Now let's go ahead and work a little bit on the sky. When you're doing your sky, the top of your sky is going to be the darkest, and as it goes down towards your horizon, it's going to get lighter and lighter. For this particular sky, I'm going to first start with wetting my paper with some clear water. This will just help my color float a little bit more. I'm starting at the top of my painting, and that'll have the darkest or the brightest colors at there, and then I'm just bringing my brush down and gradually bringing that paint down and creating more of a lighter look. I'm also going to be going in and adding more of a darker shade of blue, just basically at the top. I'm going to be putting in some cloud with a little bit of toilet tissue. It's a great paper to use when creating the clouds. So first I'm laying this in, and then I'm going to manipulate the colors just a little bit more. While my color is still wet, I'm going to float in that darker color. But I'm mostly going to concentrate just on that top region and then bring it down gradually to the horizon line. I really want to keep that horizon line as light as I can. I can even come in and mix a little bit of almost a dark navy at the top. That'll just help for contrast because I'm going to be tapping in the toilet tissue to create some clouds. I kind of just take a little piece of that tissue, wrap it up, and have little bunched lines in there, and then I just tap it. And this is a very simple way to create a cloud look. You need to do this when your paper is wet. The next area I was going to work on was my goose, so I wanted to give my paper a good dry before I began this area. I want to make sure that just the goose colors stay inside of there and doesn't float into my blue sky or into my green landscape. I'm first going to start out with my lightest, brightest colors, so I'm going to be using kind of a bright, cheery yellow for her little bonnet. There happens to be a warm gray color in my set, and I'm going to be adding a lot of water to that, and that's what I'm going to use to add the shadows to my goose. I want her to still feel like she's mostly white, but I do need to add some shadows, and that warm gray is perfect for adding those tones onto my little goose. I love to add little pink cheeks to all of my animals, so while that area is still wet, that gray is still wet on her face, I'm going to tap in just a little bit of that lightest shade of pink in my set. For her dress, I'm going to be starting with that light peach color in my set and then layering on some of the next pink that's a little bit lighter shade of pink, but I'm going to be using that color over top of the peach color while it's wet. And those colors should do a blending on its own. So it's a wet color that's applied onto a wet color, so the colors will naturally blend on their own. I'm going to be paying a little bit more attention though when I put that pink on to where it might be a shadow area. So her back little wing area, that will be darker from her dress. I'm going to definitely have a little darker shade of pink there. Underneath her bow, that will be a little shade darker. I'm going to create a shadow underneath pretty much her whole chest area, but I'm going to try to leave a bright highlight kind of around her belly area. I'm going to leave just a bright highlight on her arm that's facing her purse as well too, so I have a difference that looks different, that one wing is farther away than the other. In this set, I also have just a slightly darker shade of pink, and I'm going to be using that for the cuffs of her dress, a layer on her purse, and that little bottom area of her dress too. I'm going to be using it there. I do believe I also added to her bow. I need to have a little bit of contrast, so I need to have, even though I want it to have a very much a pink feeling, I need to add some different colors. Now, if you don't have all these different shades of pink, remember that pink is kind of a red base, so think of it as adding either like a brown to it to perhaps darken it up a little bit, or add just a teeny bit of green in there to see what color you get. Yep, I can see I'm using that pink too on her bow. I'm going to be laying in a little bit of the neon pink in this set. That's really a fun color to use. I often use that neon pink from this set to add just that little extra pop of pink to my paintings. Once her head has a little bit of time to dry, I'm going to be popping in some circle shapes to be flowers. So I'm going to be mixing a little bit of that peach first and tapping in just the lightest bit of pink. These are just, I'm kind of going for more of just a round shape. I'm going to be adding some interest to these flowers or a little bit more detail using color pencil and my uni ball pen. But right now I'm just kind of getting in the colorful little roundy shapes. Before I added the pink to the top of her purse, I did take a little bit of a brownish gold color and painted the first layer of color of that color on my purse. I was just trying to mix a way to mix a different shade of pink so there was some contrast and different from her dress. I'm going to use that same color to add a shadow underneath her little sunbonnet. To finish up the little goose's body, I'm going to be using the same shades of gray that I had used on her face and on her neck and on the little wings at the top. I'm going to do the same thing down below on her little bit of belly and the tops of her legs. This is a good time to check those areas that you had done originally to see if you need to darken up the areas of the shadow of the goose. For the goose's beak and her feet, I'm just choosing out a bright shade of orange in my set and starting with that color first. I'm going to be doing it bright, but then I'll be adding just a little bit of a shadow color by mixing some brown into that orange, darkening it up just a little bit to be able to add some shadows on the top. I forgot to mention when I was doing the greens in my background, I left some white space around those little flowers in the foreground. I needed to make sure it was white because I knew I wanted to make them yellow and orange. And if I had that painted all the way green, that color just wouldn't pop and it wouldn't look right. So I needed to make sure I left some white area around those areas. Now is when I'm going to be adding a little bit of that neon pink color. I'm going to be using it on her bow and tapping it a little bit of it on her flowers. Adding this extra bright color of pink on the very front of her bow is just going to make it really pop so it doesn't blend totally into her dress. Now that the straw color of the purse is dried, I'm going to be layering in just a little bit of that darker shade of pink in my set and tapping in just a little bit of the bright neon color. I'm going to be adding some additional texture and color using my color pencils once this is all dry. If you're a sketchbook member, you get a reference sheet inside of there along with your tracer that has a picture of the painting I did, as well as the color swatch sample of what I used. This is just a handy little tool to be able to see and get ideas and examples of what I used. I always encourage everyone to make this a super fun painting experience. Paint it the way that makes you feel happy. You most certainly don't have to use the colors or the medium that I choose to paint these in. You can be as creative as you like. Definitely treat this as a little bit of an art break just for yourself. This is the stage of the painting. I can take a look at my background and see if I want to add a little bit more contrast. And I do. All my colors are looking kind of very monotone, like it's just one color. So I can kind of use basically the same colors that I originally started with, but just add another layer of that color. And that will really change it. Watercolor is a translucent medium, so whatever you see, your first layers, you're going to see those through the next layers. I mixed up a brown shade to use for my fence line and for the trunks of my tree. This set doesn't have a great shade of brown, so I often just take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and mix it up until I get the right shade of brown. I'm using a small little brush. These are small little areas. This is a size 6 brush, so it's not terribly small, but it has a great little point on it. The Princeton brushes for watercolor, they're a really nice brush. They're not all that expensive. Velvet Touch is that line, and I can highly recommend them. I've had them for a long time. They keep their shape, and the points on them are really nice. And you definitely want a little round brush with a sharp little point if you're going to do these small little paintings. For that fence, I first did the posts going up and down, and then I went back in and kind of just did irregular lines going across. That just gives it really kind of more a whimsical, not exact fence line if you do it that way. Now I'm darkening that foreground, using a little bit of that brown I just put in the background, washing that over the green and creating even a little darker color. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that orange, take a little bit of that brown, and I'm mixing an orangey brown shadow for her bill and for her feet. By adding just a tiny bit of shadow, it just takes it down a notch and adds a little bit more interest to those areas. I check the shadows one more time on the white areas of my gal to see if I need to darken them at all, and I just add just a tiny bit more darkness on her wings and underneath her dress. I let my painting dry completely and then I start my pen work. I'm going to be using a micron pen in a 01 nib size. These are small little paintings, so I'm going to be using just the smallest little detail one. This watercolor paper has a little bit more texture, so I can get more of an irregular line. I'm just using a very light touch and kind of simply just doing a very soft sketch line. I don't want my line work to be super dark, especially on these pastel-y looking paintings. If it becomes too dark, it just looks a little too harsh. So I'm doing very light pen work for these little detail areas. I'm not trying to be exact, I'm doing more loose lines. I did add 3 little birds in the sky. They're just simple little M shapes, but it does add just that little extra sense of depth to this painting by having those little tiny birds in the sky. Now I'm going to be adding a little bit of color pencil, not a lot, but just adding a little bit more brightness to this painting. I'm using a bright shade of orangish gold to add a little bit more definition to the flowers and to her hat. I'm bringing in a little bit of pink to her dress just to make a little bit of scribbly bits. I'm also going to be using just a slight bit of purple on her purse and on the flowers. I'm adding just a little bit here and there to add a little bit more interest. I'm not wanting to add too much, but just enough to keep it interesting for me. On each of those trees, I'm going to use a couple different shades of green, and I'm just doing little kind of scribbly bits inside of there, twisting and turning my pencil as I go. I couldn't find my Uniball pen to create the white pops of color, so I'm using my Jelly Roll pen instead. I'm going to be adding some highlights to the flowers, creating little lines on her cuffs to give it a little bit of texture for fabric, creating some lace detail at the very bottom. I like treating white kind of like glitter. A little bit goes a long ways. I'm going to be displaying these goose paintings inside of a little frame I had found at my local Dollar General store. I just bought it not that long ago, so it still should be available in the stores. They're bright gold, but I painted mine white and then aged them. I had laid the glass down over my drawing first to make sure I could copy around the shape that I wanted my painting to be in. I'm going to cut it out and then put it right inside of those frames. I'm not going to use the glass actually. I'm going to just give this a quick coat of matte varnish and display these little paintings inside of the frames. Well, let's take a look and see what they look like sitting in my studio displayed together. Now, how sweet are they together? It kind of reminds me of that little blue boy and little pink girl, those old-fashioned paintings. It has that feel to it. I love the little details of the little lace and just those pastel colors for spring. It is so cute, and those frames look darling, painted out in the white and then aged. If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. It really does help YouTube push my videos out there. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.